Hi there, everybody. Welcome. I'm so glad to see everybody here tonight. My name is Heather Thompson, and I am your host for this, what proves to be, I hope to be, a wonderful conversation with all of you and the team of folks who have put together this amazing series called What We Learned in Prison. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the series and the folks that are behind it. But then I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves, to actually premiere an episode in the series, and then get them to tell you a little bit about what it was like to work on this series, and also to open it up to you to hopefully elicit some comments, some questions. And then we are going to have a hard stop at 7. So we're going to just jump on this right away and admit people as they come into the Zoom as we go. So first, just to give you a little bit of background, this is an amazing program that came together really in the heart of the COVID crisis, as people were really thinking about what does it mean to be in isolation, what does it mean to be separated from people and having to be completely cut off. And of course, for folks that have been on the inside, shut off from their loved ones, shut off from one another, this is not a theoretical question. This is the life that people live every single day. And this got a lot of folks thinking about how do we tell those stories? How do we tell those stories immediately and in ways that we can share? And the team that came together to share that, you're going to meet in a few moments. And that came together in this project called What We Learned in Prison. That project was sponsored by 3 key entities. One of them is the Carceral State Project here at the University of Michigan. The Carceral State Project is put together by faculty members, students, formerly incarcerated folks, and community members who really want to marshal the resources of the University of Michigan and all of those parties I just mentioned to do some really creative thinking about how do we understand this behemoth of mass incarceration we have created and criminalization, and do it differently, and elevate what this experience has been like to do something differently. The other key team member is PCAP, the Prison Creative Arts Project. And for all of you who've been at Michigan for any length of time, you know it's one of the most important projects we have at Michigan, both a presence on the inside of Michigan correctional facilities, but also elevating every day the voices of incarcerated folks and making sure through podcasts, through programming, through workshops to connect folks on the inside with folks on the outside in community and in fellowship. And the third partner is A Brighter Way. Again, another vital organization founded by formerly incarcerated folks who similarly try every day to elevate the experience of what it's like to be incarcerated and to connect it with folks on the outside to really imagine community in new ways and to do justice differently. And those 3 entities came together to support the team you're about ready to meet. I'm going to have each of these team members introduce themselves, but first I want to, and I'll introduce them minorly one by one, but the first one I want to turn this over to is Ashley Lucas, who many of you already know. Ashley will tell you that she is the person who did sort of the, as Angela Davis says, the housework of the movement for this project. I think that's probably very, I'm sure she's underestimating all she did for this project. Ashley, none of us could survive life without Ashley, but she will tell you a little bit about the project, and then she will turn it over to let's see, who will be next, who we're going to do. She'll turn it over to Allie Friedman, who was another key person on this project, and we'll just keep going until you've met everybody, and then you'll see our first episode. So Ashley, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then you can turn it over to Allie.
Thank you so much, Heather. We're so honored that you're here with us and serving as the moderator tonight as we talk about living on LOP, what we learned in prison. My name is Ashley Lucas. I am an associate professor of theater and drama and the residential college here at the University of Michigan. I'm the former director of the Prison Creative Arts Project and the co-principal investigator of the Carceral State Project team. But more importantly to the work that we do today, I am a teacher who does work on prison arts programming. So I teach a couple of classes at the University of Michigan where students go into prisons to facilitate arts programming. And that's actually how I met some of the folks who are part of our team here and who have worked together on this series. I met some of them in class and some of them in prison. And then everybody ended up as part of my classes or my research at some point in coming home. And one of our producers on the series is Cozine Welch, who actually co-teaches those classes with me as part of the Prison Creative Arts Project curriculum. So I'm really honored to be a part of this beautiful team. I'm so grateful that we spent the summer together making these videos and sharing with people the wisdom of folks who are formerly incarcerated. And I'm going to turn it over to Allie Friedman, who is a recent graduate of the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance.
Thanks, Ashley, and thank you everyone so much for being here. Yeah, like Ashley just said, I just finished up in May, and I had the privilege of being an intern with Prison Creative Arts Project for a year, and then was also a research assistant with the Carceral State, which is how I ended up being involved with this project over the summer. Yeah, and it's just been a really exciting and wonderful time working with this amazing team and sharing the perspective and stories of some really wonderful people.
Wonderful. And the other person I would love to turn it over to next is Sriram Papolu, who was also on this project as the director of the series. And Sriram, why don't you introduce yourself and then turn it over to Adam.
Hi guys, my name is Sriram Papolu. I'm a filmmaker and I'm also currently a student at the University of Michigan. I'm a junior. And yeah, it's truly been a privilege to be here, and I'm very glad to see everyone coming out and showing out their support. Thank you. So yeah, I'll turn it over to Adam now.
Yeah, my name's Adam, and I can honestly say that this is kind of like, this is the best project I feel like I've ever been a part of. I mean, just to be able to tell the stories that, you know, we were able to capture and you know, relate to all the people out there is been you know, if it hadn't been for Pat's vision, like he you know, he was kind of like the brainchild, and it was he put one together, and it was definitely a privilege to work with Sriram, Ashley, Allie, Pat, and Cozine on this. And yeah, I'm looking forward to, you know, maybe doing something in the future too. So, and
Go ahead. Sorry.
no, you're fine. I was just.
Well, thank you, Adam. I was just about ready to go ahead and jump right on the bandwagon and sing Cozine and Pat's praises. I was about ready to save the absolute the brainchild of all of this for our next introduction. And just before I do that, I also just wanted to shout out that there are many other people who I should have thanked right up front and forgot to, but not because they weren't really important to this. I really wanted to also thank Mary Heinen McPherson, who was also instrumental to this project. I also really wanted to thank Fernanda Piers from Michigan Global, who are really shouting out this project, the residential college for being behind this project. And I also really wanted to shout out our dean, Ann Curzan, on this project, really for helping to fund the Carceral State project that made it possible for us to bring in the various partners that we were able to bring in. So I really needed to say that, and I just wanted to just slip that in there before I forgot, because it really takes a village to do these brainstorming projects that we have been able to do here. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the ideas. And the ideas are where we're going to turn now. First, I want to turn to Cozine Welch, because as someone who was really behind this from the start with Ashley, I want Cozine to tell you about that. And then Cozine, I want you to then turn it over to Pat, who is the vision behind this for sure, and certainly for this episode that we're going to see tonight. So first Cozine, and then Cozine, you turn it over to Pat and introduce Pat.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Cozine, current executive director of Our Brighter Way. We're a nonprofit here in Washington County that seeks to provide one-on-one and group mentoring, as well as ancillary services to folks who return from prison and jails here in Washington County. Those ancillary services look from everything from assistance with housing to assistance with education and enrollment into universities and colleges. So I would love, I'm not gonna lie, I would love to be like, yeah, you know, I just like had this great idea, and I picked and I took this kernel of something and blossomed it into something. Now, what I did was I listened to Pat. Pat and I have had these kind of conversations, right? And so Pat, the one in particular, there was so much conversation going on in social media about the comparisons between the forced isolation from COVID and what it's like to be in prison. And Pat was always one who was like, there's differences, but there's similarities, but there's something that we have learned in going through that experience that people need to know about this, that aid them. Like, we've made it through a forced isolation, unlike any other that folks are engaging in right now, but yet there are indeed some similarities, right? And so that those similarities need to be brought out so that people can see what wisdom can be gained from the experiences that we had. And I mean, all I really did was say like, yeah, that's a great idea. And I think that's all Ashley and I really did was like, that's a great idea. And I honestly, like, I feel like the rest of it was just me, like, and all teams, us finding our roles and then executing those roles. And the great part about it was, as anyone who's familiar with PCAP and any work that deals in, you know, criminal justice reform, it's that there's difficulties you'll never see coming. They always come up, right? But just as well, they always find a way to resolve. And I think this episode we're about to see, I think this series itself is proof of that, because there's no way you can do this work and not run into those obstacles. But the fact that you create something anyway, something that's beautiful, shows that your mission and your vision, in fact, were the right ones, and you had the right idea. And my right idea was just to listen to Pat's idea and, and do my part to make it a reality.
Okay, now, last but definitely not least, Pat Bates, tell us about the vision for this. Tell us about yourself, and then tell us about this episode that we're about ready to see.
Well, I'm Pat Bates, a research assistant with the Carceral State Project that Heather was telling everyone about. I'm also a community activist and a prison abolitionist. And I've done 17 years inside of prison. And I'm also the host and creator of Living on LOP, What I Learned in Prison. So what I thought about, as Cozine said, I thought about this COVID situation and dealing with isolation, and how everybody's really like going through like PTSD because of it. We're having a lot of issues because everybody being like pretty much trapped in a box, so to speak, right? So I thought about how much that can compare to my isolation as a youth, and how everyone else is being, how everybody I know from inside of the prisons were isolated, and how they felt, and what type of what someone down here that hasn't been incarcerated could learn from that tragedy that we had to go through. So I the more and more I thought about it, I thought about this is even a great because I also had another intention behind this. I wanted to give voice to an oppressed people. I wanted to give voice to people that were incarcerated and people that are currently in prison. You know, like, people need to know that, you know, I was just more or less trying to humanize people that's been dehumanized for a long time. So, I mean, that's pretty much my idea of this concept. And as Cozine just said, there's a lot of obstacles and trials and tribulations that we might go through in any type of process, right? And especially, you know, with prison reform, right? And And that's a great segue to go into this episode, right? Because this episode talks about how you can do anything. My featured episode talks about how you can do anything as long as you don't let anything stop you. Like all of us, all the people I want to make sure that I give a big shout out to everybody that was involved in this project, as far as our interviewees and our narrators involved in the project that were formerly incarcerated. Like they're given the voice, So what I did, I wanted to give voice to them so they could tell you what's going on in their lives and how you can utilize what happened with them and their pain. And I don't know, I'm kind of getting a little emotionally tied up because I'm a little overwhelmed by what's going on with this. I just watched my episode. I snuck and watched it, and I'm kind of taken back by it. Shout out to everybody that did that, so that was involved in the project too.
Well, how about, Pat, why don't we take this moment? Why don't we look at the art that you created, the stories that you're telling here, and then let's open it up and let's have a conversation about it and have an opportunity to really digest exactly what you just had an opportunity to look at again, and then open it up to the group that joined us today.
Sounds good.
Sriram, you need to unmute your computer so that we can hear the sound. We're still not getting sound, Sriram.
Gosh.
I'm Pat Bates, and this is Living on LOP. LOP is loss of privileges for misconduct side of prison. The lessons former prisoners learned during isolation can be applied today, as well as move forward in your lives. This episode features yours truly, Pat Bates, and I'm here to talk to you about not letting anything stop you.
Came a long way, I'm proud of you, man.
Yeah, I'm trying, man. I'm trying to do the right thing.
Forward motion movement, man. That's all we on, you know?
All the pieces are coming together, They all come together. I'm Pat Bates, a research assistant with the University of Michigan's Carceral State Project. I'm also the creator and host of Living on LOP, What I Learned in Prison, and I served 17 years inside the Michigan Department of Corrections. So when I went to prison, and even all my life, I never let anything stop me. Like prison, it slowed me down, but it didn't stop me. What I had to do was put a little halt on everything and figure out how I was gonna move forward. So when I went to solitaire, I was really stripped of nothing. Like, we know when you come to prison, you're stripped of everything. You don't have family, you don't have anything else, but you really are in a small cell. We call it the box. Segregation, they call it the hole, they call it the box. Either one fits it perfectly because you're in a box, you can't get out, you stuck, and then you mentally in a hole. Like you have nothing but some walls to stare at. But I still knew that I was getting beat down, but I'm like, I'm not gonna let this take my mind. Like, I'm not ever gonna let anything beat me. So no matter what happens, right now I'm in here in the box, but sooner or later I'm gonna get out, and I'm gonna figure out how to get out, and I'm gonna figure out what I can do while I'm in here, while I'm in this box to be productive. No matter how overwhelming that circumstances is, no matter how much of a beast it is, you can't let it overwhelm you. Like, I was in the hole isolated, bro. It was one of the most horrible experiences you go through. You completely isolated. You sitting in segregation with nothing. But I didn't let none of that get the best of me. Like, I took ownership of everything that was going on in my life. Even in prison, I took ownership of that. Like, I made sure that, like, no matter how hard I'm being stepped on or how oppressed I may feel, I still can't let it hurt me. I can't let it actually hurt me. Even in that situation where I was like completely on the bottom of the world, I made sure that every opportunity, every advantage I had, I took heed to it and used it. I'm talking about whether it was an extra tray, I'm going to get that extra tray. Whether it was an event that I could possibly win, I'm gonna go win that one. Whether it was a class that'll teach me more things about bettering myself, I took advantage of that. If you stop, right? If you stop moving and you stop, you know, like trying in life, or let something like isolation deter you, I mean, whatever was up against you won. Now you just exist and you waiting to die. This whole isolation, to me, is a horrible thing because people are letting it get the best of them instead of taking advantage of it. I was isolated for my whole adult life. As a child, I went in there, was in there my whole adult life, inside of prison, isolated, stricken to humanity, stricken to everything I had. Real shit. Now, I'm home, isolated again, so to speak. I'm still gonna overcome that just like I overcame prison. Period. That's it. That's all. I'm gonna overcome any circumstances that I have, any obstacles. I'm gonna win at all costs, no matter what restraints you put on me. They put me in prison. They put me in prison, and I still came out on top. I came out sitting here with you making a YouTube series. I'm giving voice to those same oppressed people, the same formerly incarcerated people. I'm giving voice to them through living on LOP, because that's what I wanted to do. And I had a whole lot of struggle, but I still did it. I did exactly what I put my mind to. Like the mind, bro, is magic, like for real. If you actually put something in the air and actually build on it, everything started with a thought, so you keep building on it, and then don't never let nothing get in the way of that. Nothing. Whether it's being isolated in a prison, where it's being beat down, whether it's somebody, you know, in your way, either move around them or knock them down. If there's a fence right here, jump over it, crawl under it, slip through the side, unlock it, break it down. However it is, whatever tactic you need to go on to defeat that, that's what you do. All that mentality, things started just falling into place with that mentality. Things started just coming right to me. I kept telling myself I want to win. I kept telling myself I want to win. I kept telling myself I'm going to be successful, and I kept searching out ways to do it. And those ways would find me because I was looking for those ways. They would come right back to me. If you have a persistent mindset, you will make it all the way through. You got to look for ways. You'll find a way. My advice to people in isolation today is not to get discouraged by anything. To make sure that you know that you can survive no matter what the circumstances is. Nothing can defeat you, bro. Nothing. If you actually put your mind to whatever restraint you have. It's gonna be a harder fight, but you still can succeed at any type of circumstance. I never thought I'd come this far, man.
Well, I want to first of all say thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pat, for sharing that. It was extraordinary. And so thank you. And also I want to apologize to you for this country that we live in, that we have somehow created. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for all of the people that contributed their stories to this series, and for you, Pat, for having the idea to put them to film and on film, because that's really extraordinary. Actually, the Carceral State Project, when we started this at Michigan, the whole point of the project was to finally have an opportunity to make the experiences of this horror of mass incarceration legible. What does the experience look like to the outside world from the point of view of those who've experienced it most directly? And thank God for people like Nora Kranitsky, who were, who's, the force behind this project, making it happen every day, and people like Ashley and Matt Lassiter, and then of course essential people like you, Pat and Cozine, who are on the ground actually doing these projects, because we wouldn't otherwise know what it's like inside, as you have just made clear. So thank you. I want to open it up, and the beauty of Zoom is that we can really hear from as many people as possible. And we have this crazy chat function. For those of you who are familiar with Zoom, you may already know how it works. And if you are not, you have at the bottom of your screen this thing called reactions. If you look down there, you can see it. And under reactions, you've got this little hand that kind of raises your hand. And if you can see that, I can see you, and I can actually see who raises their hand, and I can call on you basically if you've got a question to ask Pat or anybody who worked on this series, or if you just have a comment or an observation. And I just would love to open it up for our next half an hour for a broader discussion, if you'd like to do it that way.
Real quick, did everyone hear the sound?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It was great. It was absolutely great.
Okay.
Anyone want to just observation, question for Pat, question for anyone on the project who brought this to us tonight? I see Danny, I see a hand.
Yeah, I don't know. You got to forgive me. I'm not good with these.
That's okay. If I can see you, I'm happy to call you. The problem is that there's so many people in the chat, I can't see you all at once. So someone could be waving and I might not see you. So if you do have your little handy function, go ahead and click it. But if not, I'll try to see you. Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, I just want to say to Pat, that was a tremendous presentation you just gave. I did 28 years inside. I just got out. I'm literally 1 month today. And I really like how you said, prison didn't stop you. It just held you up for a minute, man, because that's how I feel like. It just held me up. And that was a really great thing. And I want to thank the videographer too. I'm sure he put a lot of work in there. That was really great. And it was inspiring for the work you guys put together, man, to show life on the inside, and how really, like you said, man, we've been in isolation for a long time, whether it was in a hole or just sitting really in population, man, to do this. What inspired you to want to do this particular program right here?
Well, am I off mute?
Yeah,
everybody hear me? You hear me?
We can hear you.
Well, what inspired me to do this particular project was, first of all, my whole intention is giving voices to people like you and the people like me and the people like everybody involved in this project, right? And the other voice is like just to maybe somebody can, show, like, people that's going through isolation now, maybe they can show some type of empathy through us, because now I ain't gonna say they know how it feels, they never know how that feels, but they could at least, you know, okay, well, if I'm going through this and I'm going crazy through all of this stuff that's going on with this isolation, I could imagine. They can't even begin to imagine what we went through while we were inside there. So that's pretty much what it is. And also, you know, just to help people in general, help people be able to cope. You know what I'm saying? That's pretty much inspired me to do this project.
You know, it's funny because I hear people always say, like, you know, from this COVID thing, oh, I feel like I'm in prison. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
man, you can go
No,
to the
you're not.
store. You can go to the
Yes.
store. Nobody's telling you, hey, get out your cell. I'm going to shake it down, or, you know, let me take all your stuff and put it in one bag and hey, here you go.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more, but at the same time, I can understand their frustration. Can I just say one thing though? I know Heather made a statement. She said she wanted to apologize for the country, man. And for myself personally, I want to just correct that. And from my regard, I don't want to apologize for the country. America is a beautiful country. It's the people that run it that suck, you know. But the country itself is a beautiful nation. I don't think you'll find a more, you know, beautiful country that where opportunity exists. But the people that run it have just become, you know, narcissistic and self-serving, that they forgot what the country was founded on, man. So I think if we get them out of there and get some people that actually care about, you know, humanity, it'd be back to being what it was founded on, you know.
Amen to getting them out of there. Okay, Bonnie.
I just want to give a shout out to Cozine. Cozine and I spent the summer together, and Cozine was fortunate enough to teach the social work students at Eastern Michigan University the experience of what it was like being in prison. And none of these students were ever in prison, but they got some education from Cozine. And you folks have to understand, Cozine is an amazing person to teach these people out there. And the patience that he had was fantastic. And I want to thank him very much in front of all of you for all the things that he has done. And one other person is Mary Heinen. Mary came to my social work class for years and brought her partner and taught our social work students, undergraduate and graduate social work students at Eastern, the experience that she had. And I just hope that we can continue this very much because it's an amazing education. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for that shout out for everybody. Caroline, I see a hand.
Hi. So I just wanted to thank everyone so much for putting this project together. I'm a freshman at Michigan this year, and I just really think this put like a new perspective on my thoughts about prison, especially as like Ann Arbor and like University of Michigan students are on lockdown right now. And I've definitely been feeling isolated, but this really just puts a whole new perspective on that and makes me think about how isolated people really can be and how I really still have a lot of freedoms that I think I've been taking for granted.
Thank you for that, Caroline. And our heart goes out to what you all are going through too. It's really unfortunate what the students are. This has been a hell of a semester for sure. So hang in there. Does anyone have any other comments? Even any of you on the team? What was it like, Sriram or Ali or anyone or Adam working on this? Tell us a little bit maybe about just some of these filming this or hearing some of the stories, because I really am so grateful for the people that were willing to share these stories. That's its own experience, right? Being willing to go on film and share that kind of pain and that kind of resilience, right?
Definitely, I can take this one. Yeah. So, like the whole project of LOP was like insane. It was like breathtakingly like beautiful for me, especially because I got to be so directly involved. Like it was to me school, because every individual had so much wisdom, so much real experience, and like everything they've said just stuck with you. And these like all these individuals that we interviewed are like some of the most intelligent people that I've ever met in my life. Like they're like so gnarly. Like I don't even know how else to put it. Like they're awesome. And to be able to get a glimpse into their life, to hear the stories that they share, and they shared so much. And I felt so like, you know, like I didn't do justice properly because they said so much, but we could only show so little. And like a lot of stuff I can show is so beautiful. Like there's so much more that all these people have to offer. And it's absolutely fantastic. And like the filming, it's just, everyone welcomed us into their homes, into their neighborhoods, into their communities. We got to see like their friends, their family. It was just it was a communal like experience. It wasn't even like filming that much. It was just like everyone's chopping it up, talking, we're all hanging out, having fun. It's like a little party, socially distanced, of course. But it was truly like yeah, once school started, I used to I skipped class to go and shoot because I learned more on the shoots than I ever have learned on class. I've learned more stuff from Mr. Bates and everybody who I work with than I ever have learned in any educational facility in my entire life. Like that's real education, like working in the field with people that have real wisdom. Like it was amazing. It's crazy.
I want to thank Sriram as well because, excuse me, I don't know exactly how much further ahead Cozine and Pat might have been thinking than I did when we had the initial conversations about this, but I never dreamed that we'd end up with a product as beautiful visually and as well put together as what Sriram was able to do for us. Sriram is the person who filmed these episodes and who edited them together and who really had a vision for what the series could look like in a way that I'm not sure any of the rest of us did. I certainly didn't. So thank you, Sriram, for your incredible contributions as an artist to this work as well. We learned a lot from you at the same time that you were learning from all the narrators of the episodes.
On that note, before we continue, can you tell everybody who's on this Zoom a little bit about where people can see all of the episodes and just tell us a little bit about the whole project?
Yeah, so definitely. So we have a YouTube channel. If you just type in Living on LOP, What I Learned in Prison, or Living on LOP, it should pop up, or any of the narrators' names, and they should pop up. And we also have a website on the Carceral State Project's website. There's a tab you'll find under Documenting Criminalization, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah, if you
and I
type
put
in
the
LOP,
link in the chat so that if you just want to click in the chat, you can get directly to all the videos.
Yeah, just type in Living on LOP on Google and you'll 100% see it on the first page.
Wonderful. Any other questions or thoughts?
We have a question in the chat from Nora Kranitsky. She can't use the mic on her computer right now, unfortunately. She asks, what effect do you all think the analogy between prison and the isolation of COVID-19 has on efforts for prison abolition? Does it help the struggle for abolition or hinder it?
I would say that oh, that's a good question, but my answer is that I think it may help the struggle for abolition because COVID-19 and people keep saying that they can be put away easily. It could, I mean, man, that's hard. That's tough. I mean, maybe it'll have people be somewhat empathetic towards anybody else that was isolated, if anything. So, I mean, if that's somewhat of a help, I believe it would help.
I piggyback off of that and say yeah. It's more funny because the one thing that we were talking about, I remember the first few conversations Pat and I were having, and we realized like though there's a different experience definitely from being in prison and going through COVID's isolation. The thing that makes it similar, the thing that allows you to gain wisdom and insight and to find a connection through there is that it was forced. It's forced isolation. We were talking to students earlier and to talk about what's going on campus right now. And they are limiting how many people can hang out together. In prison, you're limited with how many people you can hang out with. There can be no more than 6 in the yard at a picnic table, right? You can only leave your housing unit / dorm at certain given time to do certain enumerated activities like eating and recreational activities, right? So though the environment, right, though the actual housing of someone separate from society is different, the idea of forced isolation is where the common thread runs. And the fact that we recognize from our experience with PCAP, those of us who are in this work or have been in this work, we know you see changes in folks when they find a place that they can connect to emotionally and experientially with the experience of folks who are inside, right? Everyone knows from our own struggles and trauma. When something happens to us that is different from what happens to someone else, we now have a better understanding of that thing that happened to other people, right? We kind of have been introduced into this cycle of trauma that, though it is bad, creates a bond there, right? Because a human is common across all experiences. So why I think this will be beneficial towards the move towards prison abolition is because it shows the commonality of bond, right? You can have something like this happen to you. It can happen to anyone if we're not careful for everyone. So.
I guess I can third that. I think both Pat and Cozine are right. Like, no one outside of going through prison will ever know what it's like to like have what that actual feeling is. However, with what's going on with COVID, people are getting a glimpse of what it really feels like, whether that makes them depressed or, you know what I'm saying, whatever it is that COVID's got them feeling. If it's negative, there's a sense of that. You don't like that. That is to you, like, you know, whether it's inhumane or whether it helps you understand now, like what I guess the worst could be. And, you know, a lot of people who make the big decisions, they have never had an experience that gave them that feeling. So they see all this legislation or whatever, it's all words on a paper, like there's no feeling behind it. So when rules are implemented and things like that, like they don't understand. We're the ones that had to live by it. And now everybody has to live by some of the same general rules. And so I think it'll be beneficial for it. You know, not only in that sense, but also just to give people an understanding, as Pat said, like to show people who have been through the situation of prison that they're not like a subcategory of people, like they're completely different. They are the same people, they just live through different experiences. And so to have a project that kind of reaches out and pulls that subcategory of people back into the main fray by showing you that we are no different. You know, I don't think there's any negative here.
I wanted to just say two things about that too. One is that I thought it was very noticeable that when students returned to campus, it was really clear to me that students did not appreciate the idea that law enforcement would be patrolling the campus and watching their movements and enforcing their isolation. They wanted it, if it was going to happen, they wanted it to be voluntary, or they wanted it to be based on their own common sense or their own choice. And so that was a real experience for a lot of students who had never been policed before or had never really been under surveillance before or scrutiny before. So I thought that was actually a really interesting moment for some students to have to think about, what does it feel like to be watched and to be policed? And it was a very short-lived moment, but it was nevertheless, I think, a moment that some students had to think about for the first time, and hopefully a lesson to take home. The other thing that I think was really important about COVID, a very unfortunate way to learn a lesson, was that COVID laid bare this idea that prisons are other and closed off from the broader society. You know, this idea that they are walls, walls are porous, and nothing made that clearer than COVID, both because the staff that went in every day came home every day, and that disease traveled back and forth, and that the people who were inside, who were isolated, COVID made 10 times more isolated from each other, staff, from folks inside. I mean, so it just laid bare this fantasy we have that what we do to people inside is somehow isolated from what is going on the outside, because everything travels from those walls: the pain, the misery, the disease. And so it's a very horrific way to imagine that life lessons are taught. But COVID, I think, actually was a moment where people had to think hard about things that they have not thought about in a long time, or at least people have not had to think about. Some people have not had to think about them. I hope it's lessons that do not evaporate, but it's something to, I think some people had to think.
Saw Mary
I thi-
Heinen unmute herself. Do you want to say something, Mary?
Yes, please. I think that one of the most remarkable things that have happened lately is that a federal judge has ruled that prisoners are entitled to money under the CARES Act, and that was in part so they could take care of their families and their loved ones and themselves. And I have never heard any ruling like that anywhere in the law. And to me, that brings us one step closer to prison abolition, where if one check or two checks can take care of them, the family members can take care of themselves if you just let them go. So I think that there's a new acknowledgement of what the horror of prison has done to the family and to the person that's incarcerated and to us as citizens. And I think that we're one step closer, I think, to understanding that a cage is not an answer.
If I could, we only have 10 more minutes. I think what I'd love to do is just open up one more question, since we have so many thoughtful people here that we could canvas, and that is, if the series continued, if we continued to ask people to share their stories, what are some stories? What kind of things do you think are important to tell people on the outside? Certainly the story of resilience that Pat told was important. The stories of families, the stories of returning home. Like what do we need more of these? Do you feel like we need more episodes? Do you feel like we need more investment in these kinds of short videos? And we have so many beautiful podcasts also that PCAP is doing. I mean, what is the feeling about these overall in terms of as a mechanism to tell stories?
Can I answer that question,
Yeah.
Heather?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we do. I believe it does. We do need to continue on with these stories, because every single individual, just like we have 12 individuals just on LOP, right? Plus, not including the one that we're going to put out with Mary, right? They all dealt with isolation completely different. Everybody dealt this, like now people are dealing with their isolation completely different. Like each individual, like Eric Burr, this is what he got out of his isolation, how he dealt with it. He cooked and gardened while he was inside there. Jose Rivera, he developed his art and did a clothing line while he was in there. So everybody, like me personally, when I was in there, I just stayed resilient, was in full survivor mode, and then try to excel, turn that survivor mode into excelling in everything I could possibly think of. I mean, I go on and on about these individual stories, and that's just a small handful of people. So I believe that if we continue to give those people voices, I mean, the right ear will hear each one, and somebody somewhere can compare whatever they're going to maybe it's not so bad, or maybe I could deal with this. Like, I'll give you another example. Artasia Melisham, right? In her episode, she talked about self-care. She talked about how she did her makeup and hair inside of there, right? As we all know, the barbershops was closed, and the barbershops was closed, the beauty shops was closed for a long time. Nobody could do that. So, I mean, maybe somebody that was watching Artasia's episode could have grasped that from him. And that's just one. Those are just certain examples, right? I mean, there's a mass amount of people that we called it mass incarceration for a reason. So there's a mass amount of people whose voices need to be heard.
I know it's been spoken of in the chat too, and the person I'm talking to, we spoke about it before, and Mary and I have spoken, everyone's spoken about it. But I'll just give one idea. For those who know, there's this thing called Sisters Within. Like, what makes me think about that is I was thinking about the interviews, like Sriram was saying, how there's so much more in these, we're present for these interviews. You guys, you get such a beautiful snapshot of one conversations in ways in where someone may be talking about music, but they have so much more to offer than just how music affected their incarceration and allowed them to get through, right? So there's so many things that are not being told, but that this platform allows. And one of those that we always talk about that isn't heard the most is the voice of women in prison, right? And so the Sisters Within is one troop that has been going, it's like the longest one in history, and it's still going even during COVID, right? That's the strength of it. Even during COVID, it's still going strong, right? And so I would love to hear stories like that are stories of continual resistance. And I'm gonna say this too, because me and Mary always talking about this, because a lot of folks don't know. It was the women that made it so that anyone in a Michigan prison could get any of the affinities that they are afforded now. Because you wasn't getting a soup and a noodle and a job that even paid 13 cents. I mean, excuse me, was it 3 cents an hour, or even paid 39 cents a day? You wasn't even getting that until the women started filing lawsuits and put forth effort, right? So that's like a story I feel like, I'm not here pitching anything, but I'm just saying, like, this is the platform that allows for stories like that to be told. Those are the types of stories we wait to hear.
Yep.
Because those are like the real, like, civil rights, like fighting for everybody stories that need to be heard.
I agree. And my focus is really about, before I can even think about other stories that we need to tell, I want the folks in prison right now to have the stories that we've got. I really want the Michigan Department of Corrections and the federal prison to allow these videos to be shown to people who are inside right now, because it's always a bad time to be in prison, but right now is a really, really terrible time to be in prison. And these are stories of hope and survival and resilience. And a lot of folks inside in Michigan know the people in these videos and would be so inspired to see the people that they love out on the street, doing well, being successful, helping other people. I think one of the things that the series does really well that we don't talk about nearly enough is the ways in which people who've lived in prison are helpful and useful and have something active to contribute, not just to themselves, not just to other people in their same circumstances, but to our society as a whole. And I think the people living through this really devastating moment in prisons need to hear that as much as the rest of us in the free world right now.
I say, leave it to Cozine to say it better than I could say it myself about just that idea. I think that was dope. Because Artasia and Mary, like, they really had a lot to say. And, Cozine, I didn't even know that, like, that they had been like the gladiators in the courts. That's dope. Like, and as far as what Ashley said, I don't know. I think about it sometimes, and the only thing I can really say is that I talked to some guys while they're still inside, and they were on lockdown a month before they even locked us down out here, and when somebody catches that stuff, like, there ain't nowhere to put them. Like, they stay there. And so it's a whole, I hope we are able to get this and be able to shed some voices that I believe, like all of us, like, have a lot to say. They got a lot to say. They see things in ways that not everybody else sees them. And that's not to say that others do the same, or others don't do the same. However, like, it's from a unique perspective. That perspective was shaped, as Pat said, in 4 walls.
That's right.
And it's kind of, I don't know, I just feel like that's a unique perspective that needs to be heard. I mean, who else can say that their perspective was shaped in a box? And look at what comes out of it.
Let's bring in as our last comment. Thank you, Adam. And let's bring in John. John Hollingsworth has got his hand up. John, you got to unmute.
Okay. I'm a veteran recovering alcoholic. I haven't drank in almost 30 years, but I've had children that have had so much trouble with the law, and you worry about them ending up going to prison. One, I was worried about drinking and wrecking and going to prison. The other one, well, actually, he got a criminal offense, a felon, because he tried to represent himself. I got angry because I knew he was found guilty wrongly. The situation was not what was displayed in court, did not get to the truth of the matter. And I have to have compassion to people that are in prison, because it blocks you from having a future unless you indulge into something like religion, art, physical, weightlifting or something like that. A lot of times, I know anger messed up my life for a long time. I drank for 21 years and I hadn't touched a drink until I was 21, but it almost killed me twice. I feel for people that get mad or desperate, that all life is precious. We should not be incarcerating people and throwing away the key. That is not the answer. Keeping people in jail and making money off of it, that's what it is. It ain't an improvement for our society. It's actually creating a sore, and there's no cure for it as long as we treat it like it is. They get budgeted more money. They're too important in the Black culture because we have to deal with it all the time. And it's getting bigger and bigger. We don't have that many people need to be criminals. Most of it is because we aren't getting a fair opportunity and our choices are very slim. I didn't want to take up too much time, but I appreciate the effort. And these people need to be given a chance. They paid their dues. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Well, John, you said it better. that was the absolute perfect ending for what has been an extraordinary conversation. Thank you for saying that, John. And thank you, Pat, for an amazing episode. And thank you to the entire Living on LOP, What We Learned in Prison team. Thank you to A Brighter Way, PCAP, the Carceral State Project for helping make it possible. And thank you all for joining us tonight to share Pat's episode and join it on YouTube and the rest of the episodes, which will all be there for us to send out into the community and hopefully get inside, as Ashley says, to show the folks inside what's going on out here and the amazing resilience, as Pat says, that can be survived. So thank you all and have a great night and be safe.